Let me start with the obvious, which is that this is a family that has been in deep grief, a family that has longed for justice. Are they feeling some sense of justice now?
Well, they're a little relieved today that the officer was finally arrested. However, they wanted the charges to be first-degree murder. They expected that charge, and they continue to demand first-degree murder charges. They want this officer held fully accountable for how he callously murdered their gentle giant, George Floyd.
There is something about the horror of seeing this in black and white in the charging documents. Is awful. And as difficult as it is to watch those videotapes, it does seem to be exacerbated by these descriptions. And I want to read one particular part of the charging document and get your reaction to it. It says that Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 2 minutes and 43 seconds after 2 minutes and 43 seconds after George Floyd became non-responsive. That's based on the review of the body camera that was worn. And in total, he had his knee on Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Were you aware of those facts before you saw this charging document, particularly the fact that he had lost consciousness?
No, we were not, and that is shocking, and it's something that the family would just have to deal with again, which is just so much. We knew that it was about 9 minutes that he had his knee on his neck because we watched the video painstakingly and we timed it because we believe that with everybody asking them to take the knee off the neck to let him breathe, the EMT literally asked him 16 times, we counted it, just let me take his pulse. The police gave him no humanity for this man who was handcuffed face down and obviously not doing anything to resist arrest in that position, even though they lied in the police report. We did not know he was unconscious 2.5 minutes before he finally took his knee off. That's why it should be first-degree murder charges.
From a human perspective, it's hard to argue with that. From a legal perspective, let me ask you about something else that's in the charging document. The medical examiner found no findings to support a diagnosis of traumatic asphyxia or strangulation. Instead, it says that Floyd had coronary artery disease and hypertensive heart disease, and it was the combined effects of him being restrained by police, his underlying health conditions, and any potential intoxicants in his system that likely contributed to his death. What's your reaction to that?
You know, it's just an attempt to try to justify the unjustifiable. What the police did was the proximate cause that caused George Floyd's death. He was walking just fine. He was in good shape. He literally was breathing just fine. It wasn't until these police officers did this excessive use of what became lethal force that killed George Floyd. It reminds you of the Eric Garner case where they are trying to technically justify the killing of an unarmed black man at the hands of police officers who were supposed to be trained, who was supposed to know how to de-escalate a situation. When you look at that video, does that look like de-escalation? And that's why the charge should be first-degree murder, because we know that's what killed him. And to be clear, the family is taking custody of the body today, and we will have Dr. Michael Biden, noted forensic pathologist, perform an independent medical exam on the family's behalf.
In the meantime, there are the other officers, and I know in the statement that you put out on behalf of the family after the one arrest, saying that they want to see the other 3 officers who are charged. Again, on the legal basis, what would be your argument, and what do you think the appropriate charges would be for the other officers?
We believe, and George Floyd family absolutely believes, that they were accomplices to murder. that they should be charged with felony murder because they aided and abetted him in causing the death of George Floyd. And it's going to be particularly interesting that we hear what they were saying, since Minneapolis Police Department has a policy that the police officers have body cam video. And so that should tell us what was in their mind, what were they saying when they killed George Floyd, because that tells us the mens rea, as the law calls it. What were their mental thoughts? Was it ill will, or did they have good intentions? And I believe we're going to hear something from that audio that tells you they did not have goodwill towards George Floyd, as they kept the knee on the neck, even though he was already restrained.
Benjamin Crump, thank you so much. We do appreciate you taking the time. Let me bring in the Reverend Al Sharpton, who's just back from Minneapolis. Of course, he is the president of the National Action Network, as well as a host here on MSNBC. And also with us is NYU law professor Melissa Murray, who had clerked for Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who was then of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Let me pick up, Reverend, on what Benjamin Crump was saying. Is third-degree murder enough here? Let me get your overall reaction to the charging document today.
No, I do not think that third-degree murder is enough. And I do not accept that they did not arrest all 4 officers. If you remember on yesterday when I was in Minneapolis, there was the press conference, and the prosecutor, Mr. Freeman, said something about there was some evidence that would say this may not be criminal. Then he tried to clean it up later. Now we have a third-degree indictment, or not even an indictment yet, but charges and arrest after 3 or 4 days. I don't know what took that long, and no arrest on the others by the same guy that said there may be something that wasn't criminal. So one really has to look at this prosecutor with a very fine eye to even see whether we are dealing with a prosecutor that wanted to do anything at all, and had this family not put the pressure on, and many of us and the protesters put pressure on, particularly those right there in Minneapolis, I don't know that we would have seen an arrest at all. The question is whether we can get a fair prosecution and whether or not the other 3 will be arrested. We are determined to stand with this family. I've stayed in close contact with them through their lawyer, helping to get the body back, to do their own autopsy and to keep the pressure on. They are not condoning violence, but they are saying they want to continue to see people protest in a way that would make justice something achievable.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.